Okay.
Okay. Hi, Jeff. It's so nice to have you back and see you. And I so appreciate the fact that you're coming to us from a boat. Tell us where you're at right now.
Hey, Giselle, great to see you too. And I'm actually in Ocean World Marina in the Dominican Republic right now, leading our humpback whale eco tours to take people out to snorkel with humpback whales at a place called the Silverbank, which is about 75 miles offshore from here. So we load up the boat with 20 people and take them out there, and we spend the whole week out there. And it's an amazing, amazing experience. For anybody who loves whales and ever wanted to swim with whales, this is one of the best places in the world to be able to do that. And I work here with Gene Flipsy with Conscious Breath Adventures, and Gene and I have known each other since 1995. And the goals here are to really give people a strong education about the whales and about the sanctuary here, because the Silverbank is also it's a humpback whale sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And the Dominicans have been really good in wanting to keep the whales safe here. And so all of the area out at the Silverbank is also a whale sanctuary, and they've even expanded it now beyond that. So it's really, really cool to be able to work here in the Dominican Republic and to take people to swim with one of the whales that I've been studying and researching since 1994.
Well, it's I probably should have started with how we know you. The name that you go by, right, is you're Jeff Pantukhoff, but you're also AKA the Whaleman, and you have been the Whaleman since '95, right? Is that right?
Yes, yeah. That's correct.
And you came into this whole thing after an encounter down in the lagoons of Baja, and we've talked about that before, but why don't you just briefly touch on that so the folks who haven't seen the other interviews that we've done with you can understand a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'll do like a quick synopsis real quick for people. I was originally born in St. Louis, Missouri, about as far away from any ocean as one could get. And lucky for me, growing up, my parents took me to Laguna Beach, California when I was just 6 years old, and got to go on a boat out to Catalina. Halfway there, Captain yells dolphins on the bow, and I run up there and look over and literally wanted to just jump in the water with them while they're just dancing and swimming and playing on the bow wave. And it wasn't long after that I saw Jacques Cousteau on TV, and that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like Jacques Cousteau ever since I was about 8 years old. And like a lot of us, we get talked out of our dreams. And I ended up going to, instead of being a marine biologist, I ended up with a dual engineering degree working for AT&T for about 10 years. And I heard about this place while I was doing that, working at AT&T, but I was spending a lot of time in California selling out there as well. And there was this place in Baja, Mexico, where you could go down and you could be with these gray whales. They called them friendly gray whales. You could actually reach out and touch them and hug them and sometimes kiss them. And so in March of 1995, I gave myself a little vacation from work, and I drove down to the lagoon. San Ignacio, I had no idea how hard it was to get there, but it was hard to get there. There was no road between San Ignacio town and the lagoon at that time. And I was driving a 1989 Nissan Maxima. And but I made it out there. The local people there thought I was crazy for driving a Maxima across the desert, but there I was, and surrounded by these friendly gray whales in this beautiful emerald green lagoon that's surrounded by mountains and desert, and one of the most beautiful and pristine places I had ever been. And it was also, for me to be out there with those whales, it was just amazing. I was hugging and kissing and touching these gray whales for 4 days. And at the end of the trip, I actually sat down with the owners of the camp, and they asked me if I'd stopped at Scammons on my way down. And I said, yeah, I stopped there. And they go, what did you think about that place compared to here? It's like, there's no comparison. I said, Scammons, you drive into the town, there's lots of trash. I said, there's this big industrial plant. I go, I would never want to go see the whales there compared to here. And they go, oh, you saw that industrial plant there? I go, yeah. They go, that's an industrial salt plant. Mitsubishi and the Mexican government built that one, and they want to build one twice as big right here in the heart of San Ignacio Lagoon. And literally something inside of me snapped. I was like, over my dead body. I went back and I asked my boss for leave of absence for at least a year so I could help try to save this place. And make a long story short, they turned me down. And so I quit on the spot. And I started the Whaleman Foundation, which means to me bringing whales and mankind together to preserve and protect our world. And I started to think, oh my gosh, I've quit my job. I've started this foundation. What am I going to do? And I started reflecting back on Jacques Cousteau and the importance of his TV shows to me and his films. And I had a little eureka moment. And I was like, I've got it. I'm going to make a film that compares the ugliness that I saw up in Scammons Lagoon to the beauty that I saw at San Ignacio Lagoon. Because when I was there, I found out it was a United Nations World Heritage Site. It was a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. It was also a whale sanctuary, bird sanctuary. And so I couldn't figure out how they were going to let, how's the UN going to let this get done? And I cold called the UN, thanks to my AT&T training days. I wasn't afraid to call anybody. So I found out it was Dr. Mechthild Rossler, and I got her on the phone and I asked her, I said, I just been to both lagoons, Scammons and San Ignacio. I understand Mitsubishi and the Mexican government want to build this huge salt plant there. And she's like, Jeff, settle down. It's going to be okay. We've talked to Mitsubishi. We've talked to the Mexican government. If they build the plant, you're not going to see any difference there. And I go, really? I go, have you ever been there? She goes, no. I said, to San Ignacio or Scammons, either one. She says, no. Anybody on your team been there? No. I go, okay, well, I was just at both places. And I can tell you, if you allow San Ignacio to have this big salt plant, it's going to forever ruin your United Nations World Heritage Site. And I said, if I would make a film that would compare and contrast those two places, would you look at it? And she says, Jeff, you're going to take the time to make a film. We'll look at it. And so that was the first film I ever made. It was called Gray Magic, The Plight of San Ignacio Lagoon. Through another long story I won't get into, but I got Pierce Brosnan and his wife, Keely Shea Smith, to intro that short film for the United Nations. And that film, it took me 2.5 years to make 9-minute film. And once I sent it to the UN, they looked at that film. Dr. Mechthild Rossler called me back. She goes, Jeff, I just want you to know, I saw your film. I liked it very much. I gave it to my boss. He sent it to his boss. He sent it to the World Conservation Union. We want to show your film and to distribute it at the big UN meeting in Kyoto, Japan, which was in that year, December of 1999. And so they did that. And then as a result of doing that, they ended up sending an investigative team, the UN did finally, to Scammons Lagoon and to San Ignacio Lagoon. And as a result of that, they went and met with President Zedillo of Mexico. And they basically told him, listen, you can build the salt plant. We can't stop you. But if you do decide to build it, we're thinking of pulling all the World Bank funding for your United Nations World Heritage Sites. And President Zedillo decided maybe I need to come down there because I've never been to San Ignacio Lagoon.
Wow. Imagine
so in
that.
March of 2000, I had taken all 4 camps. I was working with IFAW and with NRDC and Mexico's Group of 100, and we brought in about 80 people, 3 different flights coming in, 80 people, all the camps. And on the second day there, these 2 huge big helicopters come flying in and landing right behind Coima. And you've been there, you know what that Coima camp's like, and that beautiful, desert area that's right around it. In marshland, well, they landed those 2 helicopters where they're not supposed to land helicopters. And out opens the door, and Sextos is running out there because he was head of the camp at that point, and he's running out there, waving his hands, yelling at him, stop, stop, stop. Anyway, the door opens up, and President Zedillo comes out, bodyguards, his wife, his kids, and out of the other helicopter, here comes the Ministry of the Environment,
Wow.
And the state minister, like the Ministry of the Foreign Minister, and all these people. Then they want to go whale watching, and they go whale watching for about 45 minutes. And right when they get in that whale watching area, a mom and calf gray whale come up and mug their boat. And he sat there and watched his wife and kids kissing and hugging these gray whales for about 45 minutes, surrounded by his bodyguards, just standing there with his arms folded like this. They come back, and Sextos runs up and asks them, hey, can I do an interview with you? And they go, no. But President Zedillo goes, I'm going to tell you something, and you can't say anything, and you can't report about it. But in 3 days, I'm going to announce to the world that we're going to forever preserve and protect this place. Wow. And he did that almost 5 years to the date that I first went to San Ignacio Lagoon.
Wow.
So then we had this huge celebration party and the whole 9 yards. And so that's why the lagoon's so important to me. I mean, it changed my life for the better, but I was able to work and really help flip that issue. And we beat Mitsubishi Corporation. Yeah. Which at the time was the largest corporation in the world.
Wow. Really?
Mhm.
Well, I love that story. I never get tired of hearing it. I feel like I learn something new every time you tell it. So thank you for sharing it. It's so inspirational. So if anybody's listening to this and you were that kid, or you are that kid, and you're just finally having an opportunity to experience a connection with dolphins and whales, or maybe it's lions and or bears or wolves or elephants or something, and you learn that unless someone steps in and does something, these animals are going to be at risk, then you could be that next person to step in and make a difference. That's what it takes. It takes someone saying, okay, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to make a change. And I'm going to use the resources I have, the talents I have. You had never made a film, but you figured out how to do it, right?
Yes.
But you knew how to cold call and you used that. I mean, there's a lot of things that you brought to the table and then new things that you learned. And I love that story because that's what it takes. It takes someone to do that. And you've made so many changes over the years. So I want to kind of get caught up and use the next 20 minutes or so to get caught up. Right now you're out on a boat. You're in the Dominican Republic and you're Silver Banks. That's amazing. It's one of my bucket list items. To go out with you there is incredible. So hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years, we'll get there. We've been with you to the lagoons in Baja. So catch us up. What's going on in the lagoons? We've been hearing getting some reports about low numbers. So tell us what's going on there. And for those who maybe don't know, that the lagoons in Baja are where the gray whales go. They migrate down from the Chukchi Sea. They go down to the lagoons in Baja. This is where they kind of vacation, they mate, and they have their calves. It's a very, very critical birthing ground. And it's primarily Scammons Lagoon, Magdalena Bay, and then primarily San Ignacio Lagoon, where these animals gather. And it's a great place to be able to do a count of how many whales come, because it's very consistent, and how many new whales are born. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so the last 4 years have not been good for gray whales, especially in the breeding lagoons. So the counts are way down. The last year's count, we normally in a regular season, when I'm there in March, we'd have like 100 to 150 mom calf pairs. Last year when I got there were 18 mom calf pairs instead of 100, and like 100, use 120 as probably a normal number. And the overall numbers coming in lower, lots of skinny males over the last 4 years. So what it's showing is that the whales aren't getting enough nutrition. And part of that problem is because the Bering Sea and the Chukchi Seas, they have not frozen over like they used to in the last 10 years. And the stuff that the gray whales like to eat is formed under the ice, just like krill is. And so those populations of the things that gray whales like to eat is crashed. And a lot of the researchers, there's now a joint study going up in the feeding areas, because they're easier to watch, of course, in the breeding areas, because it's easier temperatures, it's easier to get to, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So we're really looking at that. I work with the research team down there. I don't actually do their research, but I'm involved in their research. And Dr. Stephen Schwartz has been going through San Ignacio Lagoon since the late 1970s. He and his wife, that was the very first research thing that they ever did together. And he's still going there, and he works with Jorge Herban, who's the Mexican gray whale specialist. And actually, he does not just gray whales, he does all dolphins and whales. Jorge's an amazing guy at the University in La Paz. And so a lot of the students that go there that are working on their PhDs and their masters, they don't come just from Mexico, they come from all over the world. And so the Whaleman Foundation supports getting one of the master's or PhD students that couldn't afford flights from their international destination to get them there, so that they can finish off their PhD or their master's. And it's something that we're really proud of, and it's great to be able to support new upcoming youth researchers, and to get that out there. I mean, Stephen Schwartz is always like, yeah, I can't do this forever. I want to, but we need more and more people like him too. And
Right.
yeah, and like Dr. Jorge Herban and all of them. So, but yeah, we're very concerned. So lower numbers. We were hoping maybe this was going to be a rebound year. Right now, it's not looking anything like a rebound year, and still very low mom calf counts. The good news of the mothers that are there, they're healthy. So they look, they look normal. They're not skinny. And we think the reason being is that the females aren't going to make the migration down to either get pregnant or give birth if they can't make it. So I think instead of coming down in just breeding season when they're not pregnant, if they don't feel like they could make that migration, they just don't. They stay on the feeding grounds. They just ignore it. The males, they don't seem to be quite as smart, and if they're skinny, and they still go
come. There's a drive. It's a drive, but I'm going. Yeah. This is where the mating's happening. I'm going, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Girls be smart. Girls be smart. Well, has that
so one of the
happened?
cool things they're using? I was just going to say one thing more about the research. One of the really cool things they're using is drones down there that are measuring the bodies of the females and the calves. So as the calves growing and the females shrinking, they can really see how fast the calves are growing, and then how much of mother's milk and how much of the reserves that the females have to give a healthy calf a chance. So that's really cool awesome. Research. Yeah. Kind of cutting edge. They're also doing lots of recordings in the lagoon now, which is really cool on gray whale sounds.
Love that.
Yeah, so they're doing all sorts of new kind of cutting edge stuff down there, and it's I really missed not being there last year. It was heartbreaking, but I've got 2 trips this year, and if people are interested, I've got trips going to be happening again in March of 2023.
2023, great.
Yes.
And you'll be posting those here on the website so people can go. And I'm going to make a shameless plug. Jeff does such an incredible job. He's going to take you to the best camp that it's just an awesome place. The hospitality is great. The food is amazing. The sleeping quarters are beautiful. You're not in a tent. You're in these great little huts. And I can tell you the wind blows like crazy down there. And the first time we went, we slept on a tent, a little pup tent on the ground, and the tent in the morning was like smushed over like this. And the second time we went, we had a bigger tent, it was smushed over like this. So going with you, Jeff, is like a 5-star hotel. It's awesome. So I highly recommend Jeff's trips, and then just the team that he works with that take you out there to get you these encounters is incredible. So highly recommend that as well. And I'm not done going to San Ignacio. There will be more trips in my future. So that's really cool. Tell us about what's going on with the southern resident orca.
Yeah, so one of the, when I was first starting out in research, I got invited to go up and do some orca research up in the San Juan Islands and Gulf Islands in Canada. And that's all in Puget Sound, close to Seattle, for those of you who are wondering where Puget Sound and all of that is. There's a resident pod of orcas there, JKNL pods, 3 pods that typically when they're healthy, their numbers in the low hundreds. And back in like 90, I first went there in 96. And then coincidentally, the Macaw Indian hunt, the Macaw Indians decided to start hunting gray whales in 1998. And so I was doing dual things up there. I was still doing orca research, helping the couple of the local researchers there. And then also I was up there as an activist using my boat to go and protest those macaw gray whale hunts. And actually we were taking our boats out and we were interfering with them intentionally. And so I did that work up there basically from 1998 all the way into 2002. And during that time, I made a film called Orcas in Crisis because the southern resident population had crashed over 25% the time that I was up there. And it's mainly due to a lack of their traditional food, which is Chinook salmon. The Chinook salmon had almost extinct. A lot of it due to all the dams that were built in the Washington area, the Snake River dams and the Uau River dams. And the orcas also, the salmon are carry high toxic loads. They've got lots of mercury, PCBs, DDT, dioxins, all of these man-made chemicals that we put into the ocean. And unfortunately, they get absorbed up into the food chain. And the animals that are the most contaminated animals on the planet are at the higher end of that food chain. And the southern residents are one of the most contaminated animals on the planet. On average, they're about 200 to 300 times more contaminated than the average human being. And the problem is that orcas, the males, can never get rid of those toxic loads that they're loading into their blubber. And females can, and the way they can do it is if they give birth to a calf, and then they're able to off-gas about 50% of their toxins into the milk that the baby orcas are taking, which then puts the baby orcas in a really hard way to develop. So a lot of the calves are not making it past their first year because the mother's milk is so toxic. And so you've got a double whammy going on. Not enough food for the orcas, the salmon's down, and so the food that they are getting is so highly contaminated that it gets stored in their blubber, and then when they're not getting enough food, then their actual own blubber is poisoning themselves because they're living off their blubber instead of having enough food. And so that's causing what's happening up there. And the very first film I did, Archivism Crisis, which I think I completed in 2001, was for US Congress and for the National Marine Fisheries Services, and also for the Canadian Department of Fisheries. And that film helped get those orcas placed on the endangered species list, and which was great. I think it was in 2000, like the Canadians did it almost immediately. It took a few more years for the US to actually put them on. But unfortunately, even though there's like a task team that's been working up there, they really haven't been able to get the main problems. They can't get rid of those dams yet in the Snake River, and they aren't able to clean up a lot of the toxic pollution sites that are up there. So that double whammy is still occurring. The orcas had made a small recovery and were looking to be going in the right direction until about 5 years ago. Again, now they've crashed even lower to the population numbers when they were when I first made the first Orcas Crisis. So it's sort of a microcosm of really what's happening in lots of places around the world.
Right.
People don't realize how much we're poisoning ourselves through a marine diet. And it's unfortunate. We're poisoning our oceans, poisoning marine life. And, you know, there are things we can do to prevent it. And it just seems some of those things are taking way too long to get done.
Well,
The Snake River dams, there are proposals to remove them now. There is, Oregon's already said, the governor of Oregon says, we're fine getting rid of the ones that are in Oregon. It's still Washington State that's having some issues in trying to get that resolved.
I was just going to comment, you know, you made a comment earlier about how, you know, these animals are like the canaries in the coal mine. And that's a theme now that I've heard on a couple of calls that I've been doing for the Festival of Whales, and how what is impacting these animals today is what will impact us tomorrow if we are either eating the same fish they're eating or swimming in the same areas that they're swimming in. So it behooves us to pay attention, not just for their sake, but for ours as well, and to take steps to make a difference, and preferably like today, you know, yesterday, not waiting until we've lost the animals themselves and now it's just us that we're trying to save. But let's see if we can turn it around for all of these beautiful creatures. And there's nothing like an orca. You know, orcas are just, and the resident are right up there at my top favorite marine mammal. They're just beautiful, and it's heartbreaking to see an animal lose her calf and then mourn the way that this one did. That's just so sad. But there is hope, because more and more people are becoming aware of it, and they are wanting to help, wanting to make a difference. So let's step over to Maui, and then let's see what's happening over there. Is there good news coming from Maui?
Yes, there's good news coming from Maui. The numbers of humpback whales increasing still in Maui. We've have lots of very healthy humpback whales. So they seem to be getting enough food, unlike their gray whale cousins. So the humpbacks are robust as far as their population. They're robust right now as far as overall health. And I work with the National Marine Fisheries Service and the National Marine Sanctuary there in Hawaiian Islands. Ed Lyman, who's the head researcher there, I've known Ed since 1994. And he and I have been working together now. I think this will be our 13th season since we started this last study, which is looking at the overall health of the North Pacific population of humpback whales. And so the way that we do that, and where I kind of come in, is I do mainly in-water research with humpback whales. So I'm using my camera to get full body images. And so I'm shooting video primarily, so we get behaviors as well as we get the images that we're looking for. So it's usually myself and a still photographer that go in. We go in pairs, and we do that to be as safety. So we're kind of like safety divers for each other in case something would happen. Nothing's really happened at all ever out there with our research groups, which is good because we're safe and we're conscious, and we try to do things the correct way. So it's really interesting research. And what we're seeing is, we look at, basically, when we're looking at those images, we're looking at several things. First, the natural things. We were just talking about orcas, and there are a type of orca called transient orcas, which you're very well of, and a lot of people aren't, that eat other dolphins and whales. And they'll eat big whales. They'll attack and eat, full grown. They have to be kind of sickly, but full-grown whales sometimes get attacked and killed. But they tend to like to go after calves, which is one of the biggest threats to gray whale calves, the humpback calves, is predation by orcas. And a lot of the whales will have orca rake marks on their pec fins, on their tail fins, sometimes even on their backs near their dorsal fin and things. And so we're looking at that. Okay, has this whale ever been attacked by an orca before? We're also looking at any kind of shark bite scars that we might find, because people don't realize whales are so big, nothing's going to attack them. Well, large sharks sometimes will too. Big great whites, big tiger sharks. We've seen tiger sharks actually kill gray whale calves and eat them in Hawaii. So yeah, it's a very sad thing to see. Nature sometimes isn't the happiest place, and we see it with the orcas and the gray whales too on their migration. So we don't really see too many orcas around Hawaii, but in May, there are some that kind of hang between the path that most of the orcas take when they start heading back, or excuse me, the humpbacks take when they start heading back north. So there are usually some transients that are there that time of year. And so we know we're going to have some of these natural scars, which, is, we should. They're in nature. They're going to have some predators. The other stuff we're looking at is far more insidious, and we're finding entanglement scars. There's over 500,000 dolphins and whales now dying from entanglement in fishing gear every year. And these humpback whales now, as we first started, we assumed it was probably about 20%. We're finding it's 38% of all the whales that we photograph have at least one entanglement scar on them. So it's a big problem.
Whoa, time out. Okay, so the last time I saw a NOAA report, the number was about 350,000. You're saying there's a new report now that has got it at 500,000, and 38% of the animals that you encounter have got some signs of entanglement?
Yes. Yes, and it's worse on the East Coast of the United States. We partner with a study with the people on the East Coast that are doing the same, and they're showing almost 2/3 of those animals have at least one entanglement scar. Those eastern North Pacific humpback whales have a gauntlet to go through. They've got, crab pots, fish traps, lobster traps, far more fishing off of the East Coast than there is for the humpbacks that are going between like Alaska and Hawaii and there. They still have problems, but they don't have near the gauntlet like the Eastern North Pacific has.
Probably because the Eastern seaboard is so much more populated and so many more harbors that people can get to their traps on a daily basis. But here we have great vast areas where you just can't cover it daily, right?
Yeah, correct. It's to the whale's advantage to, and they can stay farther offshore on their migrations. A lot of the ones like the humpbacks that go between Stellwagen Bank and down here to the Silver Bank, they can stay more coastal because it's more of a straight line shot for
Right,
them.
right.
And so that's why we see a lot of these whales getting entangled up,
Wow.
here on the East Coast.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of work to be done. Yeah,
it's
a
a
lot of
huge, huge
work.
problem
Yeah.
and lots of work. The good news is the U.S. is taking it seriously. Had a little slippage under another administration, but I talked to the guys that deal with the entanglement issues. I did a film for the International Whaling Commission with Hayden Panettiere back in 2012. And Hayden's one of my main spokespersons. She's just awesome.
Yeah.
And that film helped get the International Whaling Commission to do an official international whale disentanglement team, which I'm a proud member of. I know you guys are part of the disentanglement network in the United States. They're on the West Coast as well. And so, yeah, we've got some really good crossover on the work. You guys have been successful in helping disentangle whales there in Southern California. And yep, there's Hayden there.
Yep. Thankfully, we haven't seen as many entanglements in the last 2 years as we did. I want to say in 2019, 2018, it was just off the charts. So things have been a lot more, a lot quieter. You don't know why. Are they making it so you can see them? What's happening? But that number is really, so I'm going to go look for that report, and we'll be updating all that information to everyone, because that's something we really want everyone on our trips to walk away knowing. And that is that, over 1,000, well over 1,000 now, dolphins and whales are dying in gear and nets every day around the world. And that's just hard to wrap your brain around, but that is the biggest threat, besides perhaps pollution, which is across the board, but the biggest threat to these animals. And we can make a difference there. You mentioned, the US has got a lot more stringent guidelines than other countries. So if you feel that you really just can't give up that crab or lobster or fish, then buy US caught, because they certainly have a lot more stringent guidelines than other countries in the world. So that's step one. Ask where your fish was caught, ask how your fish was caught. And then, you can also talk about a plant-based diet too. That might seem undoable, but there's a lot of options now for food. So that's another thing to consider when it comes to how to make a difference. So I love on your website, Jeff, just real quick, I want to just bring it around and say that Jeff is doing tremendous stuff. And if you're interested in supporting the foundation, you can go to his website at whaleman.org, and you can peruse his stuff and see some of his campaigns. There's a place there to give. And also Jeff will be posting his trips for next year. So if you want to put a deposit down and get out there, that's a really great thing. And that is part of how Jeff raises money to finance some of these different things that he does around the world. But also just to learn, there's a great place here on things you can do, steps you can take, and we'll put that down in the chat so that you can come here and make a couple of steps yourself, make a couple of changes yourself, so that you can impact it in your own life from wherever you are. Doesn't matter, you can make a difference. So Jeff, thank you so much. I love talking to you. I love catching up. I love seeing your face. And one of these days I'm going to come and see you on Silverbanks. That'll be really cool. And really appreciate everything that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to share this with everybody. And I'm sorry I'm missing Festival of the Whales, but I know everybody that goes to that has a great time and really gets a good education when they come by you guys. And if you're ever going to go whale watching in Southern California, Captain Dave. They're the best.
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate that. All right.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.